seniors, and this year, we went through it last year, not knowing really quite what was going to be the scenario with eligibility and return to play, and what guys look like in terms of having that ability. So, but you talk about two guys in Monte and Trent that have been here since I've been here, and man, it is time flies. It's hard to imagine that I'll coach a game here next year without them in a uniform, and to me that's sad, daunting. They've meant the world to me, my family, their family. I've got a ton of respect for both of them. They've had, in very different ways, unbelievable careers. And, I think that, I go back to one of the first practices with DeMonte. It was the first day of practice. He'd just been cleared from his ACL. He was not in very good shape. He had a spare tire, around him because he hadn't done anything in a year. And it just happened to be one of those practices where we did a little extracurricular running. And he was laying on the floor, throwing up, couldn't run. And then to realize that dude was going to be a participant in every game we played, and as a freshman. And, I had my mind set up early that I was going to redshirt him because of his knee. He was that good. He was that impactful. And then to see him 5 years later, most games played. Are you kidding me? I mean, what a career. He's the epitome of what I call glue guys. His numbers won't show up in the stat sheet all the time, but his impact on games has been like no other. And not very often you find a guy who can play 5 positions, and DeMonte's been that. So, I'm what a career, and I'm really proud of him. He's got his degree. He's working on a second. Young man that's worked really, really hard on the court and off the court. And Trent is, gosh, there's not enough superlatives, adjectives to say about Trent. He's had an unbelievable career. He's one of the all-time greats to play here. Both he and DeMonte have impacted winning and turning this program around. And, Trent's records speak for themselves. But both of those guys have established a culture that I'm really, really proud of. And, from a little kid in South Florida to, looking at the videos and the highlights, and when he was a freshman to, seeing him cry on the bench at the Eastern Illinois scrimmage when, he couldn't bring the ball up the court and didn't feel like he could play here, to become one of this university's all-time greats is pretty special, and is a tribute to his athleticism, his competitive drive, his winning mentality and attitude. And, he's going to play professionally for a long time, as long as he chooses to. He's that gifted, and, he's made the ultimate sacrifice to winning. And I hope when people think of Trent Frazier, it's not the records that they think about. It's the winning mentality and what he did to help this program turn the corner. And those two guys in particular, I'm extremely grateful for and very proud of. Jacob will have a decision to make. What his future holds. By the new rule, he has another year of eligibility left. He'll be a game time decision tomorrow on what his status is. Fighting a little shoulder issue, but he's become a guy that I trust so much, I value so much. He came here from Holy Cross. He's an Oakland, California kid. I loved his feel, his instincts, his motor when we started watching him on film, and he's been every bit the the student athlete that we all love. You know, a guy that's going to have a master's degree, a guy that's just does his job. You know, to quote, you know, Bill Belichick, you know, just do your job. You know, that's Jacob Grandison, and whatever he has been asked to do, he does, and he does it with a calmness and, you know, the California cool, as I call it, you know, kind of attitude. But you know, a guy that has had a great career, great season, and you know, we'll see what that holds. You know, we'll hold what holds for him. The same with Kofi. You know, have decisions to make at the end of the season, in what you know, what his best interests are. His records speak for themselves, and you know, we don't have to get into all of those things now. But you know, a group of guys that have been instrumental in changing the face of Illinois basketball, and a group of guys that have sweat equity in a program that they're really proud of, and they're I hope that's not taken lightly. Guys put a lot of work, a lot of time into their craft, and these guys have done that, and so it's been the tremendous effort to flip this thing, and those guys are big pieces to flipping that.
I guess first, just clarify, you mentioned Kofi. Is he going to go through ceremony? Okay.
He will.
And then I guess, you know, with Trent and Monte, I mean, when did you maybe know that they were going to be sort of foundational pieces to what you were trying to build?
Well, I don't know if you ever know. I think you understand that, you know, the thing I have in both of their cases, I mean, there was never talk about being a pro. There was never talk about, you know, there was just appreciation for being a great college player and a great student athlete and achieving, you know, great things. They've always been about winning. There's never been any ulterior motive. Both of them will have opportunities to go play at whatever levels that those may be, but it's never been about, you know, I'm coming here and I'm going to be a pro. It's not, and so I have great appreciation for that. You know, I think as we started to Trent got off to such a fast start offensively, but I think the one thing that when Io came, when Andres Feliz came, and you saw him develop into a great all-around player, probably then with him, you know, and I think DeMonte's just always been a guy that I felt very comfortable with, that he was going to be a big piece of our culture for 4 years, or now 5, and impact winning.
And I guess with Trent, I know when you were at Stephen F. Austin, he was a sophomore, you kind of offered him and recruited him. I guess what was that kind of like, seeing him then and kind of then being able to get a crack at him later when he got this job?
It was a big advantage. We knew him. We had done our work at SFA and had an assistant from Florida, and we had gone in and you know, didn't know if he would go at this level because of size, and yet all of a sudden he's here, and I get the job, and so it's, you know, it's a guy that we'd had, you know, some contact with, and man, you know, I felt great about him, and you know, I have no problem with small guards, so you know, I knew his gift. I knew he could really score.
You seem to get a little bit emotional talking about Trent and DeMonte. At what point did you kind of realize that those two players were going to be leaving, if that makes sense? Like, obviously you knew after the season they'd be gone, but at what point did it hit you?
Yeah, probably still hasn't. It'll hit me tomorrow. You know, and it's funny because I'm a really early morning riser, and I was watching our first game again with Iowa this morning, and got done, and I started, you know, really haven't paid a whole lot of attention to the Coach K stuff, and then started reading a bunch of articles, and then it's like, damn, I'm losing Trent and DeMonte, and you know, some of that stuff starts it gets to you. It hits home, and it's. I'm very emotional. I wear my emotions on my sleeve, as you guys know. And when you get sweat equity with guys and you love them and you tell them you love them and you treat them like family, and we use that word a lot, it's not always easy. There's some tough love in there, but man, to see what they grow into it's why I do this. It's why it's you guys think it's wins and losses and barking at officials. I think it's to develop young guys and to see them fulfill all their lifetime dreams, and those two guys have done that.
Coach, could you go a little bit more in depth on Trent's development as a player? Started out as a scorer, then added the defensive piece, and then this year playing point guard.
Yeah, I mean, he's always been a scoring point. He's always been the guy with the ball that could just go get a bucket any time. And and we had no other options his freshman year. I mean, he and LaRon had to score. If we were going to get to 50, those guys had to score. And and all of a sudden here comes a few more recruits and some help and it was always about winning. And Trent didn't know how to spell defense when he got here. I promise you, he couldn't spell it and didn't know what it was and the concepts, but. He took to heart the fact that he was always going to be little and he needed to be the hardest playing guy on the court. And for him, that was instinctual. So his pride, his wanting to win, is what I respect the most about Trent. And so it became, hey, we got some other guys. I don't have to do it all myself, but I'm gonna impact the game by doing this. And guarding and became a guy who's could run a team and lead because he as he grew older he understood every position on the court. He understood me, he understood what we did, and he's just blossomed into one of the great all-around players in college basketball and in this university's history.
With DeMonte, a lot of people remember the image of him and Connor McCaffrey forehead to forehead. How much his fearlessness, his competitive edge, what you needed when you're trying to climb up in the Big Ten and stand up to people in the league that had been for Illinois for a while?
There's street tough. He's got that, and he's got that respect. He's got that in our locker room, and he's got that Peoria manual. Just something about it, and he's got it. And you I always go back. One of the most daunting things to me was to think that when we got in the league and it was Michigan, Michigan State, Wisconsin, Purdue, and all of them had just long historic cultures, and they were so embedded and so deep and how are we ever going to get there, and how are we going to touch that? And for those guys to now be on the other side of that, it's that street toughness, it's that grit, it's that fight, it's that competitive stuff, it's the willingness to make your teammates better that Trent's done, it's the sacrifice. And now I hope we're one of those teams that everybody talks about. How do we catch Illinois? And those guys are responsible for that.
I've heard you reference the Eastern Illinois game before, but in terms of Trent and DeMonte, just what specifically do you remember about that as being the start of their journey?
It was probably a pretty embarrassing night. And that's not to take anything away from Jay. I think the one thing that man, we had a long way to go. I mean, we had a long way to go. I think that night was in full evidence, and that's not to take anything away from Eastern. But you truly hit the level that you knew where we were at. Where Illinois basketball was at. And to see Trent sit on the end of the bench and struggle, that was pretty hard.
First time
Yeah, I realized I wasn't at SFA in Oklahoma State anymore, and we had a long way to go to build this thing. I knew it before, but you know, that's when you do it in public. And I'd be remiss, guys, because I've sat here and talked about all those guys, and I've left out Plummer, and not with any intent, just being his. I don't know how you can have a better year than a one-year transfer's had, and we knew what we were getting when we got him. We knew we were getting an elite shooter, and the one thing that we knew was he would work, and that was the one thing that was very evident in the recruiting process. I would love to have been able to coach him longer than the 1 year. But for him to step in and impact a major college program with that ability, it shows his character. He had no idea what he was getting into, truthfully. And learn a new system, learn different things being demanded of you. I would put his year as a transfer down as one of the best in the history of transfers. I mean, who's had better? He's all-time best shooter that I've coached, and been willing to be coached, been willing to learn and accept every role, and so I'm extremely proud. He takes great pride. You know, he's got his degrees. He's going to have his master's degree. He's a terrific student. Everything that you want that to be and hope for, Fonz has been, and he's obviously a huge part of this team's success.
Coach, can you talk about some of the challenges that Iowa presents to you? You know, specifically slowing down their offense. Obviously, Keegan Murray, really good player. So.
Yeah, he's really good. Iowa's Iowa. I think they're averaging 88 a game their last 5 games. They're shooting it at a high clip. You've seen a dramatic, I say dramatic, you've seen a big change in their role players. Everybody talks about Keegan, everybody talks about Bohannon. Those two guys are having great seasons. But you've seen Connor McCaffrey go on a tear from the three-point line of late. You've seen his brother Patrick really step up and be impactful. You've seen Chris Murray coming off a 17, 19-point game. You've seen those guys step up and play off of all the attention that those other two guys get. And I haven't even mentioned Perkins. They put Perkins in the lineup. He had a great game against us in the first game. So they're going to play the way they play. They do what they do, with the pressing, with the zones, mix it all up. Fran is, in my opinion, had a Coach of the Year type year. You lose, the National Player of the Year, and you just put yourself in a position to have another one. And so they've had a great season, and they're playing great, and we'll have to play really well tomorrow.
Coaches often seem to talk a lot about players afterwards, that I knew this guy would be a coach. Coach K, for example, has done it with John Shire. Do you feel like Trent or DeMonte has that in their future?
Both of them. I mean, you've got to have a certain mindset to coach. You have a certain feel. If you don't have feel for the game, it gets really hard to be a coach. You got to have instinct, and both those guys have that. I think that they both have enough charisma. I think they both have what it takes to do that, if that's something they choose to do when their time's up.
When did those two guys maybe embrace the fact that they were going to be a key part of this build? I mean, do you remember kind of when that's
probably a better question for them? I think they both knew after their freshman year that that's one of the things we talked about in that after those first year meetings. There were a lot of changes, and it was them being part of the solution, and those are the guys that you go to bat with. They had incredible freshman years, both of them, and it was, I still remember DeMonte jumping up and making the three to beat Grand Canyon, and all those guys, because of their work and because of their character, I knew right then that those are guys we had to build on, and then they've done the rest. They've put in the work to make themselves better.
Do you get a different feel for when Kofi goes through tomorrow than when Io went? Because I think we all in this building kind of knew last year that last year was done for Io, was it for Io?
Yeah, it's same opportunities. I mean, I wasn't letting Io come back. I mean, we'd done everything we could do with that, and for Kofi, it's it's information gathering time again, and just see, and he'll have a choice to make. But if he does, I want to make sure he's recognized in a way that he should truly be recognized if that's a decision he makes, and he's been phenomenal. He's been one of the all-time greats to play here. His banner will hang, and as it should. And I think legacy is something that you look at those guys and all of them, and they can feel really, really proud of all that. But it'll be a decision for Kof at that time.
Just a follow-up on Iowa, Coach. A completely different, different style of play from your last opponent. Is that a challenge for you in practice, or is it just doing what you do?
No, it's doing what we do. And every game, every game has got its own identity. And, Penn State's style of play has been well documented of late. I mean, they've played, they played everybody in this league tougher than heck and had opportunities to win really a lot of games. And they did that without Lee. Lee's only played 10 games this year, and him coming back actually helps that team. They're going to be a team that'll be a pain in the neck in Indianapolis. But now you get just the opposite, and you've got to prepare, and that's what these guys do, is game to game make the changes they need to.
With guys that come in, transfer just with the 1 year, I mean, just before you make that move, just how much do you maybe struggle with the decision if it's the right guy, or just what's
it's a
that
lot of
process?
information. It's a lot more than you guys think, because it's a lot. I say this a lot of times. The transfer portal is speed dating, and it's what it is. It's a lot of times we signed him and he didn't visit campus. It's just it's gathering as much information, finding out as much about their character as you can possibly find out, what they stand for, and then you make a decision based on that information. So everything we found out about Plum, the basketball stuff was easy. Then it's about finding out about their character and what type of student they are. All those things play into those choices.
A lot of the conversation is about Iowa and how they've developed and changed. You didn't have Bello the first time around. He did a lot of coaching on the sideline about breaking the press specifically. How much different is it going to be for you against them with him available?
Well, he's very good at that. There's no doubt about that. I mean, he helps that dynamic, his speed, his passing. He's a guy that excels at a very high rate in the open court. I mean, that's where he's actually at his best. So that'll be something that we'll be excited to have in the lineup tomorrow that we didn't have the first time.
I know you're not on social media a ton, and something that's kind of
Ever.
Well,
If somebody's putting it out there, it's somebody doing it for me.
well, when you're tweeting about Joey, you are. So there's been conversation about Trent's jersey going up in the rafters. Is that something that you guys have talked about, or what are your thoughts on that?
Internally, yes, but again, that's something that we'll probably after the season have those discussions about. Is he worthy? Absolutely. I know that there's certain standards, but gosh darn, he is every bit as worthy as every name that's up there. and in terms of belonging up there. And you're talking about a guy that's, again, just look in the record book. His name's going to be dotted all over that thing for the rest of his career. And last 3 years have been a lot of wins.
You mentioned the information gathering process with Kofi. Do you think the year that he's having has changed the information at all? I know you wouldn't think that in most cases that a two-time All-American could come back, but he has a unique case.
Not for me to determine. And I'll be honest, I don't get into a lot of in-depth conversations with those people this time of year, so I haven't had a lot. That'll be, again, those are for the other 30 people to run those organizations to make that decision. Thanks, guys.